welcome to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, where we are on a journey to answer 4 leadership questions from some of the best leaders and leadership minds in the country. So today we are really pleased to have Maggie DeBoard with us as a special guest. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you were able to make it. So as we get started, introduce yourself to our listeners. Give us a little bit about your background, kind of who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a law enforcement professional. I've been in law enforcement for over 38 years. I'm currently the chief of police in the town of Herndon, Virginia, and I've been a chief here for a little over 12 years. I spent 26 years with Fairfax County Police and retired there before I came here. And so this has been my world for all of my adult life.
Nice. Well, speaking about background, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you did since you spent so much time in Fairfax County. People can wrap their hand around, okay, I know what you do as the police chief, but what are some of the things that kind of led you to that experience to where you retired from there and took over the chief's position where you're at now?
Yeah, so my tenure in Fairfax, I don't think I was in one job more than 4 years. I got moved around frequently, which was a good thing to learn and to grow, right? So I spent quite a bit of time in patrol, but most of my time was really spent in operations. So through patrol, I ended up in narcotics for 4 years and worked as a detective there. I ended up working back in the patrol as a first line supervisor, doing some stuff on the bicycle unit and just running patrol squads, which was one of the more fulfilling jobs that I've ever had, which is mentoring young folks, right,
Nice.
that are coming into the profession. And then I had various jobs after that. I worked in the helicopter unit. I started Fairfax County's first safety officer program, probably at the time a very unique program in the country. I spent about a year and a half commanding the helicopter unit. I spent about 4 years working and commanding the Special Operations Division, which oversaw SWAT and EOD during the sniper incident during 9/11. It was a very trying time for everybody in the area. And then worked my way up through the upper ranks as a major and a deputy chief overseeing investigations and special operations there.
Nice. And just for some background for folks that aren't as familiar, and for some of the younger listeners that may not remember, she was talking about after 9/11. If you Google DC sniper and the DC sniper incident, that was a huge thing at the time. And,
it was crazy. It was crazy, and I just remember with the SWAT team, we really didn't know what to do. We were deploying around the county in just reaction teams because we didn't know where or when the sniper was going to hit. We didn't know what we were looking for, but it was more of just trying to have resources available, using, partnering with other agencies to spread those out in case we did have an issue where we could respond and the problem.
It certainly wasn't simply Fairfax County that it was happening in.
It was all over the region. It was Maryland. It was DC. It was, it was even down toward Fredericksburg, down in that area, in Ashland. I think they had one at that time. So it was a very unsettling time for our communities, for sure.
Yes, especially when you're trying to hit a moving target that you don't even know what you're aiming at. That's tough.
And we looked for a white van that didn't exist for a very long time as a part of that. But you don't know until you get information.
Exactly. So you look back on it, it's like a squirrel moment now, but it's at the time, like I said, what do you go with? What little tidbits you happen to have, and that's all you can do.
That's all you can do.
The other thing is, explain to folks that aren't familiar with the helicopter program in Fairfax, just a little bit about what that encompasses.
Yeah, I don't know how much they've changed now, but generally, Fairfax County has done all of the medevacs for Fairfax. So the medevacs, when you have a bad wreck, is not typically done by a hospital like it is in some places.
Right.
But they do the medevacs. So if somebody gets critically injured, including an officer or somebody from community, they will do the medevacs to get somebody quickly to the hospital. But they also provide significant air support for the region, including the town that I work in now. So they provide that in case there's somebody missing, or they've got somebody who is fleeing, or they can see a pursuit from the air. So they provide very invaluable eyes in the sky that even at nighttime that we can't do.
Gotcha. Well, and it's smart. I mean, it reminds me when I first heard of it of like the Maryland State Police and kind of their aviation program is kind of one of those, unless you're specifically like Air Care or PHI or one of these air methods or one of these different companies that's what you do. You specialize in doing nothing but medevac stuff, and that's kind of
Right.
how you run your business model. It's really expensive to do that on a, well, we might get a run, we might not kind of basis, where being able to utilize that for law enforcement for a big enough agency really gets a
Mhm.
good double usage out of it. And it is nice to be able to have those kind of resources, and to be able to kind of use them throughout the region if you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and then they do a good job providing mutual aid when that's truly needed throughout the region here.
Yeah, because I mean, 20, 30, 40 years ago, there wasn't the medevac resources that there are in the country now. I mean, it's a lot better staffed and resourced, and there's stuff available out there today that there just wasn't 30 years ago as far as private medevacs or hospital based medevacs.
Yeah, and the medical care is so much better now that the number of people that survive, critical wounds is significant compared to what it was 30, 40 years ago, even before you had those kind of assets. So it's been very good for that.
Absolutely. And one last thing before we jump into the first question, it's for a lot of younger listeners are going to be like, "What are you talking about?" But it's kind of like the MASH model. Sometimes just they found from Vietnam, just get them in a helicopter and get them to higher level of care as quick as possible, even with nothing else.
Right.
Just that rapid ability to be able to get them there. In that golden hour is a huge plus. But yes, you're right. The resources and the treatments available and what they're able to do on scene from an EMS perspective is definitely just a bit more more advanced than say 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
So let's get into the first question. So what does leadership mean to you, and what does good leadership look like?
Yeah, so I've had a lot of opportunity, I should say, to sit in different roles, and I think some of the strongest leadership roles, you might think they came like on a SWAT call or something like that. They really have been in my job here as a chief
Hmm.
in Herndon, because not only have I been chief here in the town, but I've been involved in many things statewide. So I was the president of the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police. So I was the head of the chiefs throughout the state of Virginia back
Nice.
in 2020, when everything was happening that was not good for law enforcement. So,
No,
but really, and we'll get into that probably a little later when we talk about challenges, I think. But I do believe that leadership, what it means to me is that you no longer are first. So everything you do, the lens that you look at with your employees, with your agency, with your community means that everybody comes first, but you. And I'll context that a little bit later, but you're supposed to be looking at your thoughts and your actions are focused on your employees, they're focused on your community. It means being present, it means being engaged, and know what is going on. And it's really important that you think of things in that lens because your job is to make sure that your mission is accomplished, but you're also taking care of your people.
100%. Because nobody, I would say nobody, I'll say very few agencies can say, "Hey, we're the best paid. We have the best advancement potential. We have the best whatever." So, you have the top dog, and then you have everybody else. And so you've got to figure out ways to encourage people to stay. Like, why do I want to stay working as a patrol officer here when I can go to so and so jurisdiction? And I'll be honest with you, when I was in the fire department, before there were some changes that changed this environment, put it that way. But for a long time, people were like, I don't want to go to Virginia Beach or Norfolk or somewhere like that for X number of dollars more. I love it here. It's a family, it's a community. I love where I work. I mean, it's just the environment's different. They just loved it. And then when the environment wasn't that anymore, and there was no difference in the retirement system, they could take their VRS wherever they wanted to go. They're like,
And that's a
peace.
big deal. We get certifieds that come here all the time. A large amount of the number that we hire here in Herndon is from certifieds coming from other agencies. And over the last year and a half, we always talk about law enforcement and say, what is our customer service like to the community, right? Because that's really what is our bread and butter. How do we serve the community? How do we treat them? But law enforcement, and I would imagine fire is very much the same way, we tend to not treat each other as well internally. Our or internal customer service, as I call it, our internal culture is not necessarily as good as it needs to be. And that's where you start having those environments that go rotten, or people aren't happy working there. And money does not drive happiness. So we have learned that over the years that It doesn't matter if I'm paying you a little more here in Herndon. If you don't have a good working environment, you will leave. So what we have done here in Herndon is we actually a little over a year ago, we actually put out a culture survey. We
Nice.
hired a company to do an internal survey. We came out very high, but we saw opportunities that we could get better, and we started making changes in those in how we did things internally. And a lot of it happened with me. I developed some new methods and more frequent methods of communicating with my staff.
Nice.
And we have an engagement committee that does stuff on a monthly basis. We've done a lot of little things. We put a leadership pledge together that we've all signed, and we just resurveyed from last year, and we came out even better. And all the things that we put in place, people said, "We love this. This is good. We want to continue to see
Wonderful.
this."
I love
Yeah,
that.
so we knew, and now we have you can feel the difference in this place. We are, I think, the only fully staffed agency in the entire region. And that's a big thing right now because there's agencies that are down hundreds of officers. So, we won't stay fully staffed. We'll ebb and flow. But the fact that we're fully staffed now and we feel like we could plug holes pretty quickly is a very, very positive step for us.
Absolutely. That's huge because there's so many times that it's like nails down a chalkboard for me where it's a check the box initiative. Yeah, we're doing it because we kind of have to, or yeah, this is what the association said would probably be a best practice, blah, blah, blah. And you do it and just knowing it's not genuine because people's BS meters are really finely attuned nowadays, especially with social media. Oh, here comes the chief again. Oh, what's the flavor of the month this time, right? But when they know it's genuine, it's for real, and you're actually wanting to make the place better and make improvements, and you genuinely care about what they think and their job environment, it goes a long way. So kudos on having that repeat survey come back so well, and the positive comments on the changes that you made. Because let's just say that doesn't happen all the time.
No, it doesn't. And I've talked to some chiefs about the survey that we did, and I cautioned them. I said, if you do a survey and your troops come back and say we don't like this, this, and this, and you don't put things in place to address those, you've lost them completely. You've got to follow up and you've got to make the changes and you got to commit to them. And I'll be honest with you, just one of the simple things that I did was I put out every Friday or Saturday, sometimes a weekly email. These are things going on in our world, that I want to communicate to you all. Sometimes a lot of times we also put in there just, hey, such and such did a good job this week. I got kudos on this or that.
Nice.
Any changes that we had, just different things that we want to put out or recognize or just communicate. And certainly things that I can talk about, right?
Right.
And I thought, well, this is just this is kind of getting useless. I go through this every week. Nobody really cares. Well, I found out they truly, truly cared about that when we resurveyed here in the last month. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
What's funny because I was at a place one time that did the same thing, and you see it all the time, and you really enjoy it, but you don't think about it. And the HR guy that was putting it out was kind of like, why am I doing this? It's a waste,
Right.
whatever. Have it not come out for a couple of weeks. I'm like, hey, what happened to such and such? Like, I see some new hires here and I don't see them I didn't see the email. Like, who are these guys? Right. Or what's going on? And
Right.
it makes a difference. But like I said, you don't feel like it is because no one's going to come, hey, chief, that was a great email this time,
Right.
or a great
Right.
newsletter.
Yeah,
It's just not
that's
going to
true.
happen. But that level of communication is just nice for people to know, okay, well, this is what's going on. I don't have to wonder. I don't have to, make up stuff in a vacuum because when you don't communicate with them, a little rumor mill starts, and man, that can get just a bit unruly at times.
And sometimes just trying to calm fears on things that you can't really talk about, but you say, hey, this is still ongoing. Things are okay. We're progressing. Just hang with us. On little things that even if you can't say stuff, just the
Yeah.
fact that you're communicating to them and trying to keep them calm through some adversity and challenges is a really positive thing too. Because you can't touch everybody in the building. I drop in roll calls all the time, but you can't touch everybody at the same time. So it's important that the people that you don't see on a regular basis, they get the same level of communication.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's just nice to know that, they haven't forgot about it. Hey, it hasn't dropped off the radar screen. I don't need to know the details. I know they can't share, but just the fact that, hey, they've got it handled makes things
Yep.
I tell you one thing you said that I absolutely love, and I wish I could really figure a better way to put this thing in a bottle and get it distributed on the store shelves. But you hit something where if you're a chief or you're a business owner or you're a CEO, and you ask them the question, how should we change? What do we need to do? And you do the survey, and you don't go back and either you have, I want to say something different, halfway do it, or you don't address it at all, you'd have been better off not doing the survey.
Yeah,
You're
you do
100%
damage.
correct.
You actually do damage because then they're like, well, they're just doing this to make themselves look good. We surveyed really high. They wanted this just to put out on social media. And I'll tell you, the work that we had to do afterwards was significant. I mean, we do a newsletter that talks about accomplishments. It talks about family. It talks about, oh, we had new births in the agency. You know, we had people get their education. This is what we've been doing in training, but we send it home to the families because the families don't get access to any of that. So they get to see what's going on in this place because we know our officers don't go home and they don't tell their spouses what's going on, their significant others. So we have decided now we mail that to the house. We don't even send it on email so that the families get it. They can open it up. They can look at the newsletter and they absolutely love it. So now we're getting more and more content because we even have a section for off-duty life, you know, highlight some things you guys do on off-duty. And we are getting just tremendous content to put out 2 to 3 times a year now is our plan to put that out.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, even if you had enough content to put something out, you know, every quarter or every month, I mean, or every other month, that's fantastic because I think most people that aren't in police, fire, and EMS don't realize that, you know, I know my wife talks about it, you know, every once in a while, but she was like, when you were in the fire department, like you would leave for a 24-hour shift and, you know, just smile and see when you get home, whatever. But you really don't know that they're going to walk through that door again tomorrow morning.
No, you don't. You never know that.
You really don't. And I mean, it's one of those interesting kind of anxieties that you just kind of have to, you know, put to the wayside and say, okay, well, you just hope and pray for the best and, you know, just kind of put it out of your mind. But you truly don't know when they leave out of there with their, you know, service pistol, they leave out of there with their gear bag, they leave out of whatever. Are you actually coming back tomorrow morning or at the end of your shift? And
it's never guaranteed. Yeah,
it's never guaranteed.
I mean, even in our first newsletter, one of the things that we did, we spent a whole page highlighting the wellness resources we have here in Herndon that the officers have access to and our dispatchers, of course. But we wanted the families to know about those things because then the family could start prodding. Hey, you know, hey, Maggie, why don't you go talk to somebody? I know you got resources there. Why don't you use access to the financial resources the town has? Why don't you can you make an appointment for both of us? If the spouses or significant others know about those resources, they're going to ask, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there's intent for both of those things too. We want the families to be involved as best we can because we know they can't be here to see what's going on.
And then that really is a big thing with helping with the engagement too. When they know that it's not, when I go to work, it's not just a family, that my work family really encompasses my entire being, right? My significant other, my partner, my spouse understands what's going on. They see what's happening. And you're right. They're not there all the time, but they hear enough about it to know the business, to know what's going on. And for them to get those little insights, hopefully there's a lot of chiefs that are out there taking notes and be like, you know, that's probably not the worst idea in the world. I think I need to maybe start doing that.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work for sure for our staff, but just keep in mind what the spouses are seeing, and you know this well, Dave. The spouses are seeing the negative stuff on the news. So we try to highlight all of the positive in here. And it's not there's nothing negative in this newsletter. Even highlight some of the advanced training that we give them and things like that to make them feel a little more comfortable because they get the negative everywhere they turn. This is nothing but positive for them.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, you guys have gotten negative from Jump Street from 50 years ago. I mean, I remember when I first started, you know, we had our Class B cover shirts, kind of like you have now, and, you know, we had our pins and the badge on and whatever in the fire department. And they're really, other than the fact of, hey, that cat's not wearing a belt, you didn't see a lot of difference. If you weren't really looking at the patches, okay, is that a firefighter or is that a police officer? Like, you really couldn't tell. And so it's at one point we were like, from a safety thing, these polo shirt things aren't so bad, right?
And everybody loves the firefighters. Well, and firefighters, it was a good thing to separate themselves for us because it's a very different. They're in a very different role. They don't have the adversarial roles with the community that we are forced to play at times. As I tell some of the recruits, policing sometimes is very ugly, and it's just the reality of what it is. So, it's a very different very different position to be in, for sure.
It's unfortunate, and the bad part about it, the more you can get, and I know we're going to talk about this in one of our other segments, but the more you can get active in the community and really, put that positive message out there and have those positive interactions, it goes a long way to helping it. But yeah, from kind of internal, like, inside the ball game kind of thing, it's like, yeah, throw the tomatoes at them, not us.
We understand
help,
that.
right?
We understand that.
And I realize most of the firefighters don't have the temperament to carry a gun either. It's like you can only do so much with an axe.
Yeah, there's a reason why some of us have badges, and there's a reason why some of us use fire hoses. And but we're both needed. So and we work very well together when we have shared missions. There's no question we work very well together.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you 100%. We lots of internal teasing, but we got along fantastic with our police department there in Portsmouth. So with that, let's go ahead and conclude this segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we will be back with our next two questions in just a bit. We are back with Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we are here with special guest Maggie DeBoard, who's the chief for the Herndon Police Department. So let's jump straight into our second question. What's one of the biggest leadership challenges you've had to face?
So for me, after 38 years, there's been a lot of things that we've seen. We talked about some of the big operational issues and 9/11 and the sniper thing. But really, for me, the biggest thing and the worst time that I've ever seen in law enforcement during my tenure was 2020. And there were a couple things going on in 2020. Certainly, COVID was affecting the entire country. But for law enforcement, we also had all of the police reform, the riots stemming from the George Floyd incident, and really just the attacks on police that really heightened during that period of time. I've never seen such an exodus of people in my life from the profession during that time. And it was a combination, but really we took a lot of bad press over an incident, a bad incident that happened that officers, were held accountable for in that incident. But outside of that, it was almost like we had all committed that crime. And it was really disheartening for all of our officers that they go out there every day and they're working hard to try to protect the community. And they were taking complete scorn from not just the community, but from the media every day. And, we were blessed here in Herndon. We have a very supportive community, and our officers didn't experience riots. They didn't experience a lot of negative rhetoric or anything directed to them because we had invested in this community. But it didn't matter. That's how bad it was. It didn't matter. They saw it everywhere they turned. One of my roles, unfortunately, I took over as the president of the Virginia Chiefs during this time. And what happened in Virginia was, and I'm sure it happened in other states, is our General Assembly then tried to enact all these laws and actually did enact a lot of laws that were very anti-law enforcement. And many of them did nothing but put us back. They did not help us. They made us less safe, and they made the communities less safe. So I spent a good part of the year trying to defend the profession. And I'll tell you, Dave, I was standing in front of legislators. A lot of what we did then was even testifying through Zoom because COVID didn't even allow in-person testimony. But we were called racist to our face down in the General Assembly. We were not treated well. It is almost like we had committed that crime ourselves. And I can tell you from the VACP, from the Virginia Chiefs, we sat down with the governor during that time. We went to the table early in 2020. We said, we want to be part of the solution. We want to help reform police. We want to do the right things. But it was nothing but a fight.
Oh, wow. Well, and the sad part is when you're there offering to help. It's one thing if you'd taken an adversarial relationship right from the beginning, right? We're not here to help, whatever you say you want to change or do, we're going to be against it. But it kind of reminds me of the national chapter, the National Association, SHRM. I remember they're getting a lot of heat for, why are you, at the table for this particular administration or that particular administration, or why are you talking to this person or why are you talking to that person? I like the fact that they're, policy over politics, but he's like, hey, we're going to have a seat at the table. If it involves people and managing people, we're going to have, labor, employment, whatever, companies. And so we want a seat at the table. They're like, because I think the motto that they used was, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu.
Yeah, and we were at the table, but we were flat out ignored in most cases. But we
Yeah.
fought. I mean, I remember being on Zoom and calls up to midnight, trying to advocate to keep things in place that we knew. So this was an overreaction. There was an overreaction. We got to do this, this, and this, and some things needed changed, and some things have been positive changes. But many things were reactions just because people thought that it was better. And what happened was it made us significantly less safe and it made our communities less safe. And we're still struggling for that because the other thing it did, it affected the mental health of our first responders. And it truly drove many, many good cops out the door in mass. So then now you have a big void where you can't recruit and hire because nobody's coming in the door during this time. And your experience and expertise is going out the door at the same time. So it has created significant problems and challenges for all of our jurisdictions. And that affects the communities. It absolutely affects the communities.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and even if it's you're not talking about law enforcement, just for the fact of all your organizational knowledge walking out the door, all that experience
Absolutely.
walking out the door, and then you're not getting new people in, it's like, what do I do? I mean, and then you're right when you talk about specifically law enforcement, we don't have the staff, we don't have the people, we don't have like there's emergencies coming out, there's dangerous situations. Well, we don't have the staff to send, or well, we only have one or two officers and we should be sending four or five to this particular type of situation. So then you're calling mutual aid all the time, and they're stressed and tapped as well. So I mean, everyone's in the same spot. So it really makes it difficult. And the bad part is the citizens suffer. And like I said, the people end up getting out of the profession. That was really probably the saddest thing for me, is to see all the people just like, forget it. This is going to be the way it's going to be. I'm not going to, yeah, I can pay the bill somewhere else. I'm out.
It was
And
tough.
that was sad.
Politics were ruling the profession, and politics are always part of the profession, right? But they
Yeah.
should never rule the profession. And we even saw a significant amount of good police chiefs walk out the door, and at a
Yeah.
time that I don't think they were ready to. They would not have been ready to go. And again, COVID, an overlay of COVID did not help that.
No.
But what we also saw, and we talked about good leadership before, was this is when leadership should have stepped up. And even during COVID, I talked to agencies around the area here even that said, we never saw our chief, we never saw our commanders, they never came to work, they stayed at home every day. Well, guess what? Your patrol officers have to come to work every day. Your dispatchers have to come to work. So why aren't you in the office instead of on Zoom, right? So being present, we talked about that. That was important. So leadership, there was never more important time, I think, in this profession for leadership to be present, to be engaged, to be communicating with their troops. I was in roll call all the time talking about legislation, and this is what we're doing to defend you and your rights and your immunity and all these things. And even when there were no one else working, we would go sit down there and say, I know you're at work today, but so am I, right?
Yeah.
Because they were worried about their health with COVID. They were worried about taking that home. When you get involved in a shootout, right? You're talking about some of these things. You get involved in a shootout at work, you go home, your family's safe. When you came to work and you were exposed to COVID, you go home, your family's not necessarily safe. You might be taking that home with you. So the
Right.
fear was significant during that time. The fear politically about being fired or held accountable for something that was a simple mistake, and the fear of being sick or dying because of COVID was significant. You put those two together, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. And it's not like you can put up little, clear plastic barriers like at a bank teller thing, or at a manufacturing organization. I know a friend of mine here locally that runs a small manufacturing place, very 50 employees, and it was absolutely crippling for him almost the amount of OSHA stuff that they had to do to try to create the safe environment. But there isn't a safe environment when you have to go into people's homes and you have to physically apprehend somebody, or you have to, you get that close contact. There isn't that type of thing. Okay, you can, all right, I throw a mask on. Okay, that's about the extent of it. All right, maybe I got some nitrile gloves, right? We're robbing them off the medic blind, right? Whatever. But but other than that, I mean, it's really difficult to make that environment safe, so to speak, during that time. So yeah, of course, the apprehension is 10 times higher and worried about taking that stuff home. But you're right. I think that's the time where good leadership is the most needed, and not,
Mhm.
like I said, I can work remote, so let me stay home on Zoom, and yeah, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out doesn't work real well, especially in the first responder environment.
It sends a message, and it's not a good message.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? So, with that, let's go to the next question. So, what do you see as one of the biggest mistakes leaders make today?
So from my perspective, I think much of that is leaders accepting positions, not understanding what's involved in leadership, and not prepared to lead the proper way. So I give you an example of that.
Sure.
When you take a leadership role, you can't compromise your ethics, your standards, any of that, because you're in a role to save your job. I don't believe that that's I don't believe that any good leader. I mean, obviously you have to pick your battles. You have to work the political realm. But if you're not willing to stand up for what's right, and for your troops, and know that that could cost you your job, then you can't effectively lead, in my opinion. And again, you still have to have to pick your battles. You have to figure out how to best do that. But I see too many when they're pressed with things, either politically, they don't stand up for what they believe. They hide behind fear, and your troops see that. So they want to know. They see that you hold them accountable. They see that if that's what you're doing, and good leaders hold their people accountable. But when your troops are out there and they're doing the right things and they deserve to have your backing, they also need to see that you're willing to stand up for them as well. And too many leaders won't do that, and that's not good a good position for you to be in, because you lose their trust and you use their credibility. So I think part of that is not understanding what that role means. And one of the other mistakes that they make is they're not consistent in how they lead. And, they see that very, very clearly when you are inconsistent with how you do your job.
Yeah, if you treat one person one way and one the other, those things are just glaring and they're hard to overcome once they're done. And you're
They're very
absolutely
hard.
right. They're toxic. You hit the nail on the head is that not every hill is the hill you want to die on, but if they don't know that you have their back, they're like, well, they don't have my back. I'm not going to have theirs. And unfortunately, you have a whole lot more exposure than they do as far as on an individual type of basis. So you being able to go down there and fight for them and be able to stand up for them and advocate for them, even if it doesn't turn out the way you want it, at least them knowing, well, you know, she did everything she could do. And at least I know that she's got my back if something happens.
Yeah, and then that's important. I mean, because they'll go out there and they'll work very hard and they won't hesitate because they're out there. They know that if they're trying to do the right thing, that you'll have their back. And I've had some real challenges here, as a chief, over the course of my 12 years, where I've had to stand up. It cost me some political capital at times, but I know it was the right thing to do, and I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't not do that again. I mean, I clearly would. Sometimes you look back at things and you say, I might do this a little differently, because we always should be self-reflecting on how we handle challenges, always, right? And if I say, yes, Dave, I would do that again. I would absolutely engage in that challenge again, but I might do it a little differently. It's easy to look at from hindsight, but you should be looking at that from hindsight, because if you face it again, you want to know how you can best maneuver that. But that doesn't mean you wouldn't face the challenge. It just means you might tactically do it a different way.
Absolutely. And because, like I said, they are absolutely looking at you when, hey, I'm doing the right thing. I did what you trained me to do. I did what you asked me to do. Now I'm in this situation. Like I said, heart's in the right place, trying to do the right thing, or whatever the situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to keep my people. I want to make sure that they're here, they're happy, they do their job, they're pleased with what and they stay. They're not going to, if for any reason are like, yeah, they're going to throw me under the bus. And so if that happens, hey, I'm out of here, right? Like I said, they'll
Yep.
50 cent an hour extra. They're gone. Hey, we're
Yeah.
hiring certifieds. Well, hey, look at my wallet. I got one. See ya.
Yeah, we talked about that frequent communication, but as you just mentioned, they're watching you, so you communicate frequently on a variety of levels, but they want to make sure that your actions are matching your words, because if they're
Yes.
not, if they're incongruent with each other, there are major issues.
Well, and you're right. And one of the things with kind of just the current environment, the last 15, 20 years on it, and with, social media and everything, it's not all tied into social media, but we mentioned before, people's BS meter is pretty finely attuned now. I mean, people don't
Yeah.
just, well, that was the the annual speech from the chief, and that's just what we. Mm-mm. I mean, they know kind of the corporate speak versus the you actually mean what you're saying and you're actually going to do it. And I see the actions that follow behind it because I said just the corporate speak, check the box. I'm saying what I think I'm supposed to say, but they know it's not for real. Yeah, flavor of the month. They're going to be like, no, I'll just kind of do. I call it the unholy HR contract, right? I'm not a lawyer, right? I didn't go to school for 3 years to charge people a lot of money to say it depends, right? But I kind of talk about long before they talked about quiet quitting. I always talked about the unholy contract, which was you pay me just enough not to quit, and I work just hard enough not to get fired.
Yeah, and that's even one of the things we did in our survey. It actually surveyed the level of engagement you have among your employees.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal for us. So if you have employees that aren't engaged or that are very low engaged, you've got to decide, well, if they're not engaged internally in here, are they even engaged externally out of here? Right. And that's a big deal for our communities. That's a really, really big deal.
Yeah. Because you need people that are willing to step up and actually take care of things that need to take care of that they know of versus I'm not getting out of this car till dispatch
Absolutely.
says.
That's not what we want.
No, 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 not by any stretch of the imagination. Absolutely not. No, I think that's like I said, just doing the survey, stepping up and actually, defending your folks and realizing that people just get their back, but not every place is the place you want to call in a nuclear strike. Not everywhere you want to go scorched earth, right? You're not looking to burn every bridge that you cross.
No, you gotta pick your battles, and you got to realize some that you're never going to win either, and you have to be able to accept that and then move on. It doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean you didn't give an effort. But at
Yeah.
some point, there's some things you just can't overcome. You
Nope.
can't fix, and you have
But
to
it,
understand that.
But the cool thing about it, even if you know you're not going to win, they still see it. They see the fact that nothing she could do about it, but she still got her back. She still went down there. She still went down to the council. She still went wherever and
Right.
advocated, fought for our behalf, did what she could do, even if it wasn't. And that goes a long way. It really does.
Yeah. And when you can't win a battle, your troops generally know that you can't. Especially if they see you try and they know what you're dealing with. Many of them, they're not. These are smart people, and they know what you're dealing with, and they just appreciate the exposure for them, the fight for them. But sometimes they fully realize that we're not going to win this one.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a follow up question on something you said, but the follow up question fits perfectly into our last question for the next segment. So I think I'm going to hold it till then. So
Okay.
let's go ahead and wrap up this segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we will be back for our fourth and final question in just a moment. Welcome back to our third and final segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, here with Maggie DeBoard, Chief of Police for the Town of Herndon, Virginia. And we're going to jump straight on into our fourth and final question. And this is going to lead into some follow-up I had from our last segment. But what do you think is the best way for leaders to improve their leadership skills?
So it's really a two-part thing here, in my opinion. So a lot of it is on you. What are
Right.
you doing proactively to educate yourself, to expose yourself to different things and engage in those things? And but a lot is also on the organization that you work for. So for chiefs, I think it's a little different because you see many chiefs that don't educate much once they get in the seats and they kind of stop growing and developing. But for a chief, it's really about what are you involved in? What's your exposure? Are you on committees? Are you on advisory committees? Do you have mentors? Are you doing things that require you to leave your comfort zone so that you can grow and learn? Because as you know, Dave, you don't grow unless you leave your comfort zone and are exposed to different things. And that's where I've grown the most in the last 12 years, where I've been inserted into roles that I hadn't done before. And the education that I got out of that, I could never have gotten in a classroom. So a lot of that is on the chief to do that and finding good mentors and having those networking. But on the lower levels in the organization, it is imperative that if our officers, they take assessment centers, they score such and such, they say, okay, you're eligible to be a sergeant, but they're not prepared for that. You have to do the things to not only put them in the educational environment that they can learn what that means, but you also have to pair them with people in the organization that teach them how to do those things.
Yes. Yeah, and like I said, you have to a degree, take it on yourself. If you're in the lower ranks, to know what classes can I get? Who can I be around? What questions can I ask different people? Like you said, where can I try to find a mentor? But we talked about it off air. There's so many organizations that are just like, hey, we have this leadership position that needs to be filled, this management position, a supervisor position. Great. All right. Well, you've been here long enough. You meet the criteria. Let's, like I said, put our best officer in as a sergeant. Well, that's different skill set to a certain degree, right? Let's put our best salesman in as the sales manager. Well, he's good at closing deals. He's not great with dealing with people, right? On getting them to do stuff. So, I mean, and if you don't equip them and you don't train them and you don't give them the tools they need, if they don't have them and they're not gone and proactively gotten them on their own, I think you mentioned it before, they're going to fail.
And we've had failures here and in my old agency where, you put people in these roles because they did such a great job. They were such a great detective. They were such a great street officer. So we're going to promote them first. And they did not have the skills to lead. And some went back to their old jobs because, one, they didn't like it. Because they didn't want to hold people accountable. And the number one rule of a supervisor is you have your main challenges are not going to be handling a street robbery because everybody can do that. It's you're managing the people that are handling the street robbery and their daily problems and how they come to work and how they're not doing their job or the fact that they are doing their job and you're not really publicly recognizing them. They just don't have the people skills or they don't want to do it. As I tell new supervisors that it's like being a parent. It's no longer about you. Your focus is your kids and how they grow and how they learn. It is no different than being a supervisor. And some can't make that adjustment. Some can, but they have to have the structure. You have to provide them the structure, the training structure, the environment to learn how to do that. And if you don't, they will fail. But the problem is they're not just failing. They're failing everybody under them. And that's not fair to the people that they've been told to lead. So you have a greater responsibility to those people in your agency, not just to that one supervisor, because they're impacting others.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, kudos on the ones that have enough emotional intelligence to realize, hey, this is just not my jam. Like I don't want to do this. Like I said,
I respect them
happy.
Tremendously.
Oh my gosh, yes, because that's a difficult pill to swallow. Here, take my 10 to 10% back. I'm going to go back and run patrols.
Yeah, and some we put in first line supervisor levels and they do great. And then in the past, I've had some that have gone to command levels and they have failed. They have not been able to make that leap because their skill sets, despite the efforts, never reached that level and they don't understand it. Well, if I'm this, why can't I be this? Because it is a different skill set. And it's just very different. And people have to recognize that, but chiefs have to recognize that. I'd like to hit on something else too, because when you talk about, what do you think leaders need to improve their skills? One of the biggest problems we have in law enforcement, and I would imagine it's the same in the fire and EMS world, is actually I know it's the same, is that we have significant mental health issues in our professions, right? In the first responder community. And that has been exacerbated certainly since 2020 and since 2019 on. It has been very bad. And we're seeing the effects of that. And what happens is you get leaders, and it's not just chief, but leaders at all levels of the organizations who spend so much time trying to manage their organizations and manage their schedules that they take no time to manage their own mental health. And so, we have put a lot of programs in place in Herndon. I try to model them by being involved in them. We have a mandatory fitness program. I'm in there with them most months that I can do it. We have mandatory psychological checks. I have mine every year with the rest of them. You have to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you will never be an effective leader. And it took me a long time to start investing more time on balancing my personal life, balancing my work life. I've always been a workaholic. I work very hard, but I do spend a lot of time balancing my own mental health now. And there's days where I tell my folks, look, I can't do this today. I got to take care of me. And I get more respect for that, I think, than just pushing through that and pretending like everything's fine, because every day, everything is not fine.
Exactly. Well, and you hit on one thing super important. You have to model the behavior. If you tell, hey, everybody, call this number, talk to these people, do the thing, whatever the thing is, and they see you're not, kind of goes back to some of the other segments. It's like, well, if she's not going to do it, why should I do it? I don't.
Right.
It's not a priority for her. Why, they're looking to you as an example, and they're like, oh, she's involved with it, and everything's cool there. So hey, yeah, let me jump in. But you're absolutely right. You end up the cumulative stress of the job hasn't gotten the attention it's deserved over the last 30, 40, 50 years, as much as I remember when the critical incident stress debriefing thing started, right? It's like, all right, it's a big incident. Instead of just, all right, suck it up, buttercup, figure it out, right? Yeah, bad stuff happens. That's the job. That's the job, right? Okay, this happened, that happened, whatever bad thing, whatever it is. And then being like, wow, this major, huge critical incident happened. This thing was super impactful. Having professionals come in, but more importantly, having peers to be able to come in. And I think it's, I'd like to talk about that just a little bit, because I know you've spoken about that before, where, there's a difference between, all right, I'm talking to a clinical psychologist who's got this training and education and whatever, and you don't have to lay on the couch anymore, probably. But I mean,
but a lot of times it's through Zoom or a phone right now. So
exactly. So the delivery method is a little bit different. But talk about the difference between talking with a professional and then really being able to kind of work with your peers on that.
Yeah, it's critical, and you want to try to have. So you definitely want to have peers that have good people skills, and that it's not about me. And so you should be handpicking your peers, but you have peers that have been through issues in life. And, our peer support in this building doesn't just handle critical incidents at work. They help handle, people that have, somebody's that got cancer in the house, or somebody, dealing with real life issues, because we've all dealt with those. So those peer members are important. So I'll give you an example. We had an officer involved shooting here back in April. And,
right.
The first person we call that we go sit with the officer is a peer member that they can sit there and they can talk to and they can decompress with. And, for ours, it happened to be somebody that had been through a similar incident. And there's nothing more comforting than somebody say, this is how the process is going to work. You're going to be okay. This is what's going to happen. And they have that comfort level that they can talk privately to somebody. So the peer piece is huge. And we try to have those available, all the time. But, the officers have to be willing to have a comfort of who to talk to, not just, you shouldn't be isolating them. They should have that peer piece there. That means everything to them. It's not just the formal piece. The peer is the informal piece for them. Yeah.
Well, a couple things that I think a lot of folks don't necessarily realize, and you kind of sort of touched on it. For example, when an officer gets hurt and they have to go to the emergency department for whatever, minor, major, doesn't matter. Right. There's an officer with them all the time. Like nobody leaves. They never go alone, and that's not the same in every industry.
No, and it's the little things too. Like we had an officer got hurt last night, very minor, just got a few stitches in an altercation. But my captain was already texting with that officer this morning. So that's the person right under me. I usually will follow up, just say, hey, glad you're okay. Blah blah blah. But those communications are important. So not only do we go to the hospital if somebody's hurt, we take the family with us if somebody really needs to go. So it's about bringing all those pieces together, because then they realize, they truly care about us and they're going to take care of us. And I feel a little better that somebody's here. They want to see somebody, right? They want to know if I had an officer hospitalized, I'd be out in the middle of the night at the hospital. So those are the things that matter, and you can't take that for granted.
Well, and it's just interesting because a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people, if you get hurt at work, well, go to the urgent care, go to the hospital, go wherever. And I've even seen some private ambulance companies do the same thing. All right, you got hurt at work. Okay, well, we'll drop you off at the ER. We'll come back. It's like, well, wait a minute, you're not staying with them? What? That's it's just a cultural piece. Yeah, no. It's, and I think a lot of folks that aren't in the industry don't understand some of those pieces there, because there's nothing worse than, and you completely understand. I mean, I know Fairfax gets incredibly busy at times, right? And there's nothing you can do about it, but to be sitting there for 6 or 7 hours in an ER by yourself, just staring at four walls while, the dumpster fire that is going out and going on in the level 1 trauma center, and your minor injury kind of gets bumped and bumped and bumped. Unfortunately, having somebody there to be able to just talk to and keep you company and kind of informally debrief it right there. I mean,
You should
just
never
that.
be too busy that somebody from your organization can't be sitting with somebody that's receiving medical care. Any organization that would say they're too busy to send somebody is failing on every level, because there's always somebody that can go, even if it's say, I'm going to call and have somebody come out and meet you, right? Sometimes you can't
Yeah.
immediately get something when that dumpster fire is happening, but you can always get somebody there. But the mental health piece is huge. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, I started a foundation that we are planning on building at least 3 mental health walk-in treatment centers for first responders here in Virginia. And
Nice.
we want private places for our first responders to go, police, fire, dispatchers, because many of them won't want to use their own agency's resources. And, here in Northern Virginia, we do have a lot of resources available internally to our agencies, but in other parts of the state, they don't. And there's always that officer or that firefighter that says, I need help, but I don't want my chief to know about it. So they don't have anywhere to go. So our centers that we're
Yeah.
building through the Foundation for First Responder Wellness and Resiliency, we're going to build forward centers. And through those forward centers, our first responders can go there without their agency even know that they're seeking help.
Perfect segment. Thank you for the reminder. Tell us a little bit more about and go into some more detail, because like I said, we talked about mental health. I love the fact that, it started with critical incident stress, but it didn't stop with that. It's got into that, that cumulative stress that started to be addressed. And not every agency is, as progressive as you guys are to say, hey, we welcome this, we support it, we're trying to give you resources, we're going to be participating in that. And you're right, there are a lot of folks that I don't want my chief to know.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the name of the foundation again, what you're putting together, what you're doing. When you talked to me about it before, was fantastic. So tell us all about that.
So it's Foundation FRWR. It's the Foundation for First Responder Wellness and Resiliency, but it's foundationfrwr.org. That's where you can find our website. And so we're in the process now of raising the capital to build these forwards. So we call them forward centers because for us, it's about forward in health, forward in life. We want people to be happy. And our centers will not only be treating first responders, police, fire, dispatch, corrections, but they're going to be treating retirees. And our retirees need help desperately. I recently met with a group of them, and afterwards, several of them came up to me and my colleague there and said, where can I get help right now? So because they came from a different generation where you never asked for help and they didn't have resources. So they've retired damaged and they're struggling and they're not well emotionally. So we want to make sure that this center has all of our retirees have access to it too. But really, it's founded on 3 principles. The clinical care, Forge Health will be doing all the clinical care, and they have tremendous experience doing that now. The other part of it will be education and training. So we're going to be ongoing education classes in there. Boulder Crest will be doing classes, some of our other partners, which are great to teach resilience and post-traumatic growth and peer, all of that stuff. And then the other part is research, because we want to determine what are the best practices? What should we be doing now for our first responder community? We're getting ready, hopefully by the end of the year, if not early next year, to launch a National Wellness Survey Part 2. And from that data, we expect to actually get some more information to help us drive strategies to provide best practices to help our first responders.
Nice. Well, I'm really, really, really tickled that you talked about the retirees.
Yeah.
And not only did they come from a different generation, and I get the police department to a certain is different than the fire department, but one thing from a firefighter perspective, take out one thing that retiree doesn't have anymore that kind of relates to mental health. He doesn't have the kitchen table and the coffee pot.
Doesn't have connection to the people.
Exactly. And it's
and
something
it's cut
about
off abruptly. It's gone. Like one day you're here, the next day it's completely gone. You are just shut off from that network.
Absolutely. And we had times that we had some of the retirees that they would make the rounds, and they want to sit there and you're in the middle of something and they come by and you're always nice. You want to talk to them. Every once in a while you had the 1 or 2 of them that just wanted to either stay forever or monopolize, didn't realize they weren't socially aware enough to realize there's other stuff going on and there's work we had to do. But having that connection in the very first part of the morning, hey, shift starts at 0800. Okay. And we're sitting there, we get there an hour early and, got the coffee pot working overtime, got the newspaper out and everybody's able to talk between the shifts. And like I said, that works out a lot of stuff. And it's a great a kind of informal mental health
It is.
resource. But for the retirees, that's gone. Like you said, that's just that see you later, bye.
And if you
And
have
they don't
one
come
that's
back.
coming around that frequently, Dave, there's probably something going on with that retiree that's not been resolved, right? There's
Yeah.
almost always something going on that's not been resolved, and that's probably why you're seeing them more frequently and why they need that connection. Which is why we really want to serve the retirees appropriately in our centers, including having a retiree liaisons there, and having group chats with retirees that want to come back and talk, and giving them those connections again, because we want them to come to a what they feel is a safe place for them, and more importantly, a confidential and trusted place for them to talk.
When they're talking with other retirees, they're there with people that understand. Like I
Absolutely.
said, which is different, just
Absolutely.
as needed. I mean, you need the mental health professionals, you need the clinical professionals. I mean, you just have to. But
But you
they're
need
like, when,
culturally competent clinical professionals, because
right,
if I
right,
send you
that
to
know the profession.
EAP or somewhere else, right? You're probably not going to talk to them because they don't understand the job. We've had some disasters from those. EAP serves a great purpose for some things.
Oh
For
yeah, absolutely.
right for our community, it doesn't, and for especially for trauma related issues, it absolutely is the wrong way. So that's one of the things that we want to do is make sure that these centers and Forge will provide that clinically, culturally competent clinicians to serve our first responder community that understand the job, that know how to treat first responders, and we don't end up in those disastrous paths.
Yes, and I love that you getting people that know the profession, even if they weren't in it,
Right.
because sometimes it's a tough crowd. I mean, joke around and just obviously you have to kind of you deal with things by kind of jokes, and sometimes the general public, or sometimes, like you said, you go to a generic EAP and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe that you would joke about something like that." No, it's not a joke to make
Right.
fun of. It's just the way to process and deal with some of the things,
Absolutely.
especially on a lower level. Man, it's people not realizing the culture. I've seen people try to get in and they don't realize the culture, and it just ends up being disastrous. So that's huge. But beyond, like I said, having the culturally, clinically appropriate kind of treatment, just even for the retirees, them having people, hey, you did it 30 years like I did it 30 years, right? You retired at it. We all had similar experiences. We all saw different things. Being able to have that, so just the pure conversation, it's not exactly the same, but it's about as close to the kitchen table and the coffee pot as you're going to get.
Yeah, and it'll be a place that they can come and go to. It'll be available. They don't have to worry about interrupting a shift, those kind of things. And you can, and by the way, you can bring them back for training, because a lot of them need to be, even at that late stage in their life, need to be taught about resilience and how they can get better.
Those resources and the training just weren't there before. It just
Absolutely.
absolutely weren't. So no, I definitely we'll definitely talk offline about some different ways to try to, kind of support the foundation. But I really want to try to get the information out about that, because that is
Appreciate
a
that.
resource around the state that absolutely is. Like I said, not everybody has the same resources that Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads do,
Well,
especially Northern
and
Virginia.
the other part of that is really, as I've told, we want a chaplain spiritual programming, all those things. And we talk about, well, we have one down here. We have one in this area. We don't need it. It's really about bringing the resources that are very functional and good now and bringing them under the roof of a forward center and having them accessible to all. Because right now, as you know, you see so many of these resources we have between police, fire, they're all siloed. They don't want to work with each other. They don't. We want these resources available in one place. We want people to be able to access them, and we don't want these silos that really create barriers to people getting care. So we just want to bring them under and make them available, and do it right without people looking. So
Flyer on a bulletin board, whether it's at the ER, whether it's at the station, whether it's wherever, you see flyers all the time. Oh, there's this resource, that resource. So like, okay, so what? And I'm not downplaying them. The problem
yep.
is, you're right, they're siloed. And you're like, well, I don't know when to call and who. The one thing that really struck me about what you were talking about with the foundation is that, in my mind, the way I kind of process it is that that's the central hub.
Yeah,
I
that's
can go
exactly how we look
there,
at it.
and if I go there, they'll know enough about all of these other resources that are around the Commonwealth and nationally, whatever. They'll be able to point me in the right direction. So I don't need to know all the resources. I just need to know I go to that central hub, and
Right.
they'll either help me or get me where I need to be to get the help.
Yeah, and most importantly about those resources, we want to only refer vetted resources. These are resources that we have vetted. We know people have been to. We know that they're doing good work.
Yes.
Because there's, to be honest with you, in the mental health world for first responders, there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there just trying to pitch their product as this is the best thing and this will help you. And you see that in a lot of different things, and many of them are not vetted. There's some great people doing great work out there, but there's others that are not. And we want to make sure that we're only supporting the ones that we've determined have been, fully vetted and are helping.
Well, and for people to know that too, when they come there and you're like, hey, we only refer people to, fully vetted resources. And you're right. There are folks that as soon as a topic gets popular, it doesn't matter what the topic is. You're going to have, every Tom, Dick, and Harry jump in there. Oh, I want to start doing this, right? I'm going to do this type of training or provide this type of resource because that's the hot topic now. Well, yeah, that's not the person you need to be doing that. And so
they don't
I like
know
the
any
fact
better.
that,
The first responders,
exactly.
the chiefs don't know any better, right? But we want to be a resource for CEOs, for chiefs, for fire chiefs, for police chiefs, for dispatcher heads. Say, hey, I'm struggling with this with my agency. Give them some guidance for leading, because a lot of times what we see in the mental health world is you have some chiefs that just say, no, I'm not doing this stuff. You have others that are doing great stuff. And then you have others that say, oh, we do this and that. But in reality, they're not really supporting the programs at all. And their troops do that. So we want to just impart how important it is to bring resources to your folks, because they've been suffering for way too long. And, we were able to pass legislation in Virginia for PTSD and for depression and anxiety related to work-related events. We're one of the first in the country to ever do that. And those are workman's comp for work-related specific incidents. But there's not even enough resources to serve that workers' comp need right now. So, we're hoping these centers, our clinicians, can get vetted to actually serve that purpose as well.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. Well, we will definitely, I've got a ton more questions to ask, but we're out of time. One thing that I wanted to use this however you want, you talked about chiefs getting in somewhere and not developing the kind of, all right, I'm here, I kind of rest on my laurels or whatever. We had a kind of a statement of kind of, we just had a little thing that we used to tease people with, and I liked it. And I was like, I'm going to keep using that, even though I'm not in it anymore. I was like, somebody comes in there, I'm 25 years experience as a firefighter. I'm 30 years experience as a police officer. Well, okay, cool. Do you have 30 years experience as a police officer? Or do you have 1 year experience as a police officer, chief, firefighter, captain, whatever, that you've rinsed and repeated 29 more times?
Right. That's a good way to look at it. And, we talk about going back to school and all that. You don't have to necessarily go back for formal education. There is so much educational opportunities through a variety of methods that we already talked about. It's about growing, getting out of comfort zone, exposing yourself to new things. And some of it may be part of some formal education as well.
But what are you doing to grow and develop your skills at whatever level you're at? That doesn't necessarily mean I'm rising through the ranks. I'm going from small department to bigger department to bigger department. I'm not doing the city manager model, right? Just going. But I mean, what are you doing?
Might be frequent reading, right? I mean, it's something as simple as that.
Yeah, but feel free to steal that one. That was one we used to use all the time. Do you truly have 30 years experience, or do you have 1 year of experience that you've rinsed and repeated 29 more times?
That's very interesting. I like that. Yeah.
So great. Well, thank you so much, Maggie, for being on. We will absolutely talk more about the foundation. And that is it for this episode of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave. We will see you next time.